Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And there are so many things one could look at to substantiate that statement. This is a classroom in a rural area. And this is one of our main roads. Many other roads are in that sorry state. The last 45 years have seen Zimbabwe's infrastructure collapsed. It is tragic. The country was supposed to, had the potential at least, to become the South Korea of Africa. Instead, we've become just another example of a failed state. One could say that this was foretold. The former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, Ian Douglas Smith, once said that Zimbabwe, if there was to be majority rule, if blacks are to rule themselves, people in towns will walk on sewage until they believe it's normal. At the time, many people dismissed him as a racist, but one has got to say some of the things that he said have not only come to pass, but to be surpassed. Zimbabweans are not only just walking on sewage, they are drinking it.
Iri ndo tengi redu rekudhara iri rataifamba kudhara. Apa pakatsemuka apa ndo pakanyorwa naTazani zvaanga akanyora zvezvo ndo pakabva patanga kutsemuka. Saka iri rimwe racho iri tengi iri inyuwani but ratotsemuka futi harina time. Saka mvura yese iri kurasa kupinda muino donhera mamukwisu ikuyerera ibva inopinda mamukwisu mvura yese. Situation yatinayo kuno Las Vegas. Dzava dzimba zvakanaka mabhedhisi asina kana munhu asini zvangobvaruka bvaruka ndo zviripo kuno kuno.
What we're seeing there is raw sewage flowing into Makowisi, one of the rivers that flows into Chivero. And to those who are not familiar with Zimbabwe, that is one of the main supply dams, the drinking water to the people in Harare and Norton and Chitungwiza. These are the big urban centers. So what has gone wrong? I think a lot of things have gone wrong in Zimbabwe. What Ian Smith was talking about there, he was right. We have been walking on sewage and they've done nothing about it. This is the beginning of the Christmas period, and I really would like to address the issue of people doing something about it. Don't walk away. If you see that sewage, it should make you stop and think. This flowing raw sewage is a serious health threat to you and your community. And so do something about it. Just walking away is no solution. I should believe that many people will be going to their rural homes during this Christmas period. And the poverty in our rural areas is one of the worst. Our people in the rural areas are living in abject poverty. I think there is a lot one can do to change it. One of the things that are an immediate need in the rural area is clean drinking water. We don't need somebody from outside to tell us that drinking water from a shallow well is unhealthy. While you are there, the week or 2 weeks you are there, surely you can organize you and your relatives, friends, to dig a well 5 meters deep. And build around it so that it's well protected. So that from now on, your rural relatives will be drinking clean water. That is doing something and not walking away from this sewage. The other thing you can do is build a Blair toilet. Up to 70% of the rural people right now are still using the bush toilet. That's shocking. In this day and age, do we really need somebody to tell us that using the bush toilet is a serious health hazard? How much would it cost to build a Blair toilet in the rural areas? Very little. One of the problems, in my view, in Zimbabwe today, why the country has been stagnant, is that the regime has denied the people in the rural areas title deeds to the land on which their mud hut is built. I've talked about this several times. The main reason why the ZANU-PF is consistently denied people the title deeds is because it does not want them to have any economic rights. And the right to own land is the one thing that the rural people can meaningfully have. Interestingly enough, Ian Smith was advised to give the rural people title deeds in the 70s by the late John Robertson, an economist and a banker. And he was told that if you give them title deeds, they will be able to build better homesteads for themselves instead of the mud huts. The banks themselves would even have the confidence of lending these people money to build a decent homestead. Because the homestead with the title deeds will be a collateral security in its own right. The people themselves, even if they should decide, oh, okay, we want to move on, they can sell it if they've got the title deeds to the land on which the house is built. But Ian Smith said no. His argument was simple. If I give the blacks, if I economically empower them, the next thing they'll be asking for is political empowerment. He was not prepared to give the blacks any meaningful political power. Interestingly enough, John Robertson gave the same plan to Robert Mugabe after independence. And Robert Mugabe rejected the plan for the same reasons. He too was not prepared to let the blacks have any economic empowerment because he wanted to control them. What is interesting here is it's not as if the ZANU-PF leaders do not know this. They know it. Here is Margaret Longo, a freedom fighter in her own right. She was in the War of Independence. And then after independence, she was a ZANU-PF MP. And when she fell out with Mugabe and the rest, she was elected as an independent MP. Here she is speaking on that very issue.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Kuti the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
This is very true. So the rural people have been kept in these mud huts for political reasons. It is interesting to note here that whilst ZANU-PF has stubbornly refused to give title deeds to the rural people, the chefs themselves have title deeds to vast farms, 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. In a recent divorce case, it was revealed that Mugabe's daughter, Bona, has farms so big that if they were put side by side, they would cover the landmass of Lesotho. And she has got title deeds to all those farms. And yet the regime is denying the rural people title deeds to even 1 acre of land. Talk of walking onto sewage and being indifferent. That is political sewage and being indifferent. I think the people of Zimbabwe have got to realize, even those so-called elite, they've got to realize that as long as millions of these ordinary Zimbabweans in the rural areas are being kept poor by ZANU-PF for political reasons, the whole nation will never test freedom. Because come elections, ZANU-PF has got already a pool of votes they can count on. To give them a head start. And 60% of the votes, at least in Zimbabwe, are rural voters. And ZANU-PF has often claimed that it has the stranglehold in the rural areas. Rural areas have been, ever since the country's independence, in fact, no-go areas to opposition. While the people are forced to live in the mud huts, the ruling elite are building mansions for themselves. This is Robert Mugabe's famous Bushungu Blue Roof mansion. We cannot run away from the reality of the political situation in Zimbabwe. And we need to deal with it because it affects us all. One of the intellectuals in Zimbabwe, the late Edson Shobo, once said that when they were still in Mozambique, there was a problem in SANU-PF where they could not discuss anything of substance and concluded. He called it the Mozambique syndrome. He said the minute those individuals started losing the argument, they will accuse you of being an American spy. Just to avoid discussing the substantive issues. This has been a serious problem in Zimbabwe politics. We have avoided discussing the substantive issues by bringing in trivial accusations, meaningless accusations. If you criticize ZANU-PF, you are called a Western puppet. If you criticize the opposition, you are called a ZANU-PF agent. Just to avoid the substantive issues. But after 45 years of avoiding the substantive issues, we need to change, because those substantive issues have not gone away. And so I come back to my original argument that charity begins at home. We, every one of us, must do something to break the mold of the indifference of walking on sewage. That Ian Smith was talking about. Those who go out in the rural areas, you can do something significant by either digging a well or building a Blair toilet in the rural areas. If you want to do something even more substantive, I think you should start asking the question of your local MP, or even just talking about it on the social media. Why is it that the ruling elite have got title deeds to 1,000 square kilometer farms, and yet they are still denying title deeds of 1 acre to the rural people? Since 45 years after independence, they are still using the same oppressive measures that were adopted by the whites to keep the majority of our people poor and politically powerless. You can make a difference, and I think you should make a difference. For your own sake, you must make a difference.